Well, the Pittsburgh Penguins, they do have Kyle Dubas as their top option. They're awaiting word back from him. But who will be their backup plan if Dubas does tell them no? Stick around for that coming up right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at NWSR Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. You can go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL. And when you enter promo code LockedOnNHL, they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti style tumbler with every order. So let's jump into this. This week came, it left. Kyle Dubas is still a free agent. I'm getting flashbacks to Yager Watch from 2012 with how this just continues to go on with no end in sight, but I do think there is an end coming, and I will touch on that a little later. This is my first episode on StreamYard. We have moved on past Restream, and for those watching on YouTube, check this out. Got a brand new graphics card. On the right, we'll discuss Mathieu Darche as a fallback. Kyle Dubas talked for the second segment, and then we will finish off the show with Tristan Jarry's season in review. Let me know what you think down in the comments about this new graphics package. Let me know if StreamYard looks better than Restream for those watching. For those just listening to me on audio, you can go on YouTube and check it out. If you want, you can also just send me, DMs and whatever about this episode as well. You guys are the OGs in terms, because I started only doing just audio before pivoting to posting on YouTube. But I love all of you just the same. But let's jump into it. So if Kyle Dubas does say no to the Penguins and he wants to maybe take a year off, spend some more time with his family, wait for the Ottawa job, who would be the backup? And that, my friends, is Mathieu Darche of the Tampa Bay Lightning, the assistant general manager and their director of hockey operations. Per Elliot Freeman on 32 Thoughts, he is one of the other finalists still standing. He did discuss Steve Greeley as well, but I do think this would be Darche's job if Dubas declines the job. And you're probably wondering, who is Darche? Well, jotted some notes down, got some prep work done on him. He has a very good resume. Works with the Tampa Bay Lightning, as I said. He's their assistant general manager and the director of hockey operations. He's worked for the Lightning since 2019, has risen the ranks there very quickly. Before that, he was a player in the NHL, played over 200 games. I believe the number was about 250, and sat in during labor talks when there was a lockout in 2012. You kind of knew he was going to have a role in management when he was sitting in for those talks in 2012. That was, remember, the league had a 48-game season. Started what? I was like December, January to April, May season, whatever that was. But he was sitting in during the labor talks, helped the NHLPA negotiate a labor deal with the league, and then did the same thing with this latest CBA deal. Didn't turn into a lockout, but he did help the NHLPA negotiate the latest CBA deal with the league. And he's done a really nice job with the salary cap in Tampa Bay. He's kind of Julien Brisebois' right-hand man when it comes to that. And yeah, I get it. Tampa Bay, you can say all you want that they cheated the cap when they Kucherov'd their way to a cup final, whatever. That rule has been in place long before they abused it. Remember what happened with Patrick Kane before that when he was put on IR, came back for game 1 of the playoffs, Blackhawks just ripped the league in half there. That's been going on for a long time. There's a gap in the rule. I shouldn't say there's a gap in the rules. It's you're allowed to do it. And I know it made people mad, but got them a championship. So yeah, you have the league to blame when it comes to that. He has done a really nice job with contract negotiations for the Lightning. When you look at some of the deals they've signed, his handiwork is all over that. Brayden Point is signed for a lot of years. Nikita Kucherov, Anthony Cirelli, Nick Paul. Well, Nick Paul, I think, is a little bit of a weird deal because he's 28, signed for $3.5 million, but $3.15 million A lot of term on that one for a bottom six player. He's done a nice job bringing back Patrick Maroon at a lower cap hit. They did a nice job identifying Mike Asimont, and he has a lower cap hit. Mikhail Sergachev just got his deal last year. That was a really nice job. $8.5 million. That's a steal, in my opinion. Victor Hedman, his deal. Eric Chernak signed for a long time. He's only 25 years old. Philip Myers, Hayden Fleury, Zach Bogosian, all these players making, below or at league minimum. And obviously, he was there when the Lightning signed Andrei Vasilevsky to his ridiculous contract. So his fingerprints, are all over this roster when it comes to the salary cap and contract negotiations. And I think that's why he's the biggest reason, or that's the biggest reason, why he would be such an upgrade over on Hextall. He actually knows how to negotiate contracts with players and is good with the cap and has done a really nice job of drafting and helping acquire players next to Julien Brisebois. He's young. I know he hasn't been a GM before, but he's been knocking on that door for quite a while. If he doesn't get this job and Kyle Dubas does say yes, I'd like to think he will get a job either, I wouldn't say this year because the Maple Leafs are the only other team without a GM, next year or the year after. He's very close. And I do think he will be a very good general manager in this league. And, obviously there is the point to discuss. What if Dubas says no and then Darsh pulls himself out? What happens then? Well, Steve Grilly, according to Elliot Friedman, is still involved. It looks like those are the three finalists for the position. They would have to hope that Grilly still wants a job. If not him, you might be really up a creek at that point. But Darsh, in my opinion, he is the next best option behind Dubas. I know some people will put Darsh actually above Dubas, but I think Dubas is a little bit better than him, I think, by the narrowest, slimmest of margins. But I really like Darsh's work in Tampa Bay. He's, rose up the ranks fairly quick in terms of hockey ops. He is ready to be a GM. I don't think you would see him overpaying for depth players. Is he going to trade a second-round pick to acquire the corpse that was Mikael Granlund? I don't think so. Is he going to, screw up the salary cap so bad to the point where you can't even start your season with the 6 defensemen you want? Remember, the Penguins, they wanted Ty Smith to start the season with them this past season. They were very impressed with him at camp and preseason. They couldn't because they had no salary cap space. That's how badly Ron Hextall screwed up the cap. That would not happen under here with Darsh. He uses analytics. He's forward thinking. He fits Fenway Sports model to a T. And I truly believe that. So I think the Penguins will be getting a very strong individual if they do hire Darsh, if Dubas says no. For all those reasons that I outlined, I think his drafting would also be better. You're not going to see him make weird, bad trades. I don't think you're going to see him make unnecessary signings. Josh Archibald, fine player, not a day one free agent signing. I don't think you would see Mathieu Darche do that. So that's where I'm at when it comes to Darsh. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. You can also send me a DM and stuff. Would you like Darsh as a GM if Dubas says no? And are you concerned that he would pull himself out of the mix if Dubas takes a little long to decide? And I'm going to have more on that coming up after this commercial break. I have a couple scoops, some things that I have heard on Friday, when to expect a decision, why it's not that bad that he's taking the full weekend to decide. That's coming up right after this commercial break. But let me know your thoughts about Mathieu Darche as well. But before we get into the latest on the Kyle Dubas situation, we do have to discuss bird dogs. Are you tired of sacrificing comfort for style when it comes to your active wear? Well, introducing bird dogs, the game changer in athletic shorts. Picture this. Premium shorts designed for maximum performance combined with unparalleled comfort. They are here to revolutionize your workout routine. With their unique built-in liner, these shorts offer ultimate support and flexibility, ensuring you stay comfortable during even the most intense workouts. And here's the best part. They are more than just workout gear. They're versatile enough to take you from the gym to the street without skipping a beat. Designed with pockets that actually work, Bird Dogs give you ample space to store your essentials while you're on the move. Bird Dogs are made with premium breathable fabric that keeps you cool and dry throughout your activities, Perfect for the trails, the gym, or simply lounging around. They are also the shorts you've been searching for. Order your pair of Bird Dogs today and join the thousands of satisfied customers who have made the switch. Visit birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL and enter promo code LockedOnNHL to get a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti style tumbler with every order. Bird Dogs, where the style meets comfort and performance meets perfection. Get yours now and unleash your true potential. All right, I'm back in this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at National Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. So let's get into the latest when it comes to Kyle Dubas and the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, as I said earlier, Friday came and went. No decision. That is by design. I have been told by a couple of people he is taking the weekend here to mull this over with his wife. I know Elliot Friedman touched on that on the 32 Thoughts podcast, but I have heard that he wants to take this, but he needs to discuss it with his wife. And you know what? This is very typical for job searches, people. Anyone that is listening to this show or watching it, have you ever had a situation where you've applied for a job, it's been offered to you, but then the person offering it to you goes, hey, take a few days, discuss it with your family, get back to us at the start of the week after. That's what's going on here. I understand that people are concerned because the draft is in a month, agency is just after that, and you won't have a lot of time. I totally get that. And as I said in my first segment, you never know if someone will pull out. That is a very realistic possibility, like a Darsh or a Steve Gridley. But it is the right move for me, at least in my opinion, to give Dubas as much time as he needs to discuss this with his wife. I heard that she accompanied him this week down to Pittsburgh to check out the area. And who knows, maybe they're looking at new houses or something like that. But it's obvious that he's very much considering this job. I've heard he wants it. He just needs to clear it with his wife and convince her and the kid, obviously, to move down from Toronto to Pittsburgh. And again, this is a tough decision. I'm sorry, it is. You're uprooting your whole life. Toronto and Pittsburgh are two completely different cities. You're moving from a different country. I don't care that it's a 4 to 5 to 6 hour drive. You're uprooting your life up there to move down to a city where you haven't spent much time in other than when the Maple Leafs have come to Pittsburgh, once or twice a season? So I get it. He's being very thorough. He wants to discuss it with his family. I very much support that. This is very typical, again, of regular job searches where they give you a long weekend, let them know early next week. I have been told they are targeting an announcement on Tuesday. That's their hope. Their hope is to announce this, if he accepts it, on Tuesday. He could take a little longer than that. You never know with people, but their hope is right after the holiday, Memorial Day on Monday. Yeah, for those that are in Canada or other countries, this weekend here is Memorial Day in the United States. It is the unofficial start of summer. Everyone goes away. It is one of the busiest travel weekends of the year. Outside of the day before Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve, the day before Christmas Eve, this is in the top 3 to 5 of the most traveled days in the country. People go to the beach, they have cookouts, barbecues, all that stuff. People also finished school around the country this week. No one is going to be online this weekend. That is how it is with Memorial Day. So I am not surprised that A, he didn't decide today, and B, if he somehow did and we don't know about it, the Penguins are delaying the announcement until next week because, I don't think you're going to do a news dump on a Friday right before Memorial Day. Everyone's going away. I think you want to capitalize from a PR perspective on Tuesday when everyone is back working, back online. Boom, you make the announcement one way or the other. And, Penguins are obviously hoping that Dubas is the guy. I've also heard the contract offer is more than 4 years. They have gone all out for this. I don't know the money terms on it. I don't know if anyone will ever know that. But I've heard that it's longer than a 4-year term. And I mean, I can only assume that the money is pretty good for that. So that's really the latest when it comes to Dubis. If I had to make a prediction right now for you all, I do think he's going to take it. I think he will be able to convince his wife that this is a good opportunity for him to get right back into it. It's obviously a unique challenge because this team is at the, they're close to the end of the window than they are at the beginning. It's a new city. There's not as much media pressure here than there is in Toronto. I know I'm kind of like doing my pitch for my Thursday episode a little bit here, right? But I do think he's going to take it. I understand that a lot of people are getting impatient because this is almost like Yager Watch from 2012 where you're hearing all these things and then it goes south. I don't think that's going to happen here. I do think he's going to take it. If not, though, I think the Penguins will be in good hands, assuming Mathieu Darche and or Steve Greeley are still in it. So that's really the latest on Kyle Dubas. I'm glad I got to tell you a couple of scoops from what I've heard. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. You can also send me a DM. Do you think he will take it? Do you think his wife will oblige to him wanting the job here? Because again, I've been told he wants to take it, but he's going to take the weekend to discuss it with his family, and that is fine. One more thing, there's one more thing on this. It's only been a week since he thought he was going to be in Toronto for the next several years of his life. They're probably going to offer him, if he had stayed, it was going to be, at least 4 to 5 year term, something like that. So he was ready to stay. He was. Obviously, things changed and he got fired, which is why he's looking at this opportunity. But you got to give someone like this some time. Like that's human nature, people. And again, I get it. I very much do. So again, that'll wrap up this segment of the podcast. Coming up to end the show, we are going to review Tristan Jarry's season and what the Penguins should do with him in free agency. So that's coming up after this. Before we get into that, though, we do have to discuss the official sports betting partner of Locked On, and that is FanDuel. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. I like the Heat to wrap up their series against the Celtics in Game 6. I also like the Knights to wrap up their series in 5 against the Stars, and you will see an NBA Finals of the Denver Nuggets and the Miami Heat, and the Vegas Golden Knights and the Florida Panthers for the NHL. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and Locked On. All right, I'm back in this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at Eleanor Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. So continuing with our season reviews for today, we're going to do the starting goalies before we start doing some of the reserve forwards and the reserve defensemen and all that. Tristan Jarry played 47 games this season for the Penguins, 24-13-7, 2.90 goals against average, .909 save percentage for his career, 117-16, 22.65 goals against average, .914 save percentage. Those are about, league average to a little bit above, to a little bit of above league average. Last season was, arguably his best season in the league, 58 games, 34-18-6, .919 save percentage, 2.42 goals against average. If he was coming off this kind of season, going into free agency, I think it would be a slam dunk for them to re-sign him. But the injury concern is very real. And I get it. You look at the free agent market, there ain't a lot out there, people. I know Freddie Anderson's there, and I think he would be a decent option. He played well for Carolina, but he's also battles injury concerns. Aiden Hill is there, and I think that would at least be a decent option because he's playing well for Vegas. But you got Semyon Varlamov, who's a bit older. What will the Hurricanes do with Antti Raanta? That should be interesting. Outside of really those guys, there's, again, not much there. And whoever comes in, whether it's Kyle Dubas, Mathieu Darche, especially Dubis, I should say, because goaltending is the one area of concern that I have with him if he is the hire, because for this season, his tandem in Toronto was Ilya Samsonov and Matt Murray. We all know Matt Murray with his injury concerns. Samsonov, they were lucky that they got a pretty decent season out of him because he was very inconsistent in Washington throughout the last couple of years. But still, it's a tandem that, I don't think anyone was expecting to really work. I mean, it got them a playoff series win. I mean, you take that, but also Matt Murray was banged up throughout the season, and honestly, Samsonov didn't even finish the playoffs. It was Joseph Woll that did it, and he's looking pretty solid. I made the stupid mistake of thinking he was just some like Louis Domingue guy. No. I was way wrong. I looked up his numbers, and I was like, well, I will take the L on that. He is going to be, I think, their starter at some point going forward. You look at more of the underlyings when it comes to Tristan Jarry, finished 64th this season in goal saved above expected, about, honestly, minus 0.1. So completely average. His save percentage on unblocked shots was 956, 2.53 goals against average on money puck, and then 918 for, at least that's per money puck, 918 for his save percentage for shots on goal. Money puck, it's funny. Money puck and Hockey Reference are a little bit different, which I find a bit interesting on that. But I usually only use money puck for goals saved above expected. Had a fine year when he was healthy, but again, that is the biggest concern for me. I thought I gotta be careful how I say this. I wouldn't say he choked under pressure in the Blackhawks game, but he gave the Penguins an unacceptable level of goaltending with their season on the line. I did not like the first goal that went in that made it 1-0. I know there's a little bit of a screen in front of the net, but that's still the biggest game of the season. You can't allow that shot from about 55, 60 feet to go in. The Buddy Robinson shot was obviously a pretty well-placed shot, but the Andreas Athanasiou one was just a joke. I don't know what he was doing trying to play that puck. He's not even in his net, and Athanasiou just banks the puck off him and to make a 3-1. That ended up being the game winner. I don't know what the heck that was. So if you are bringing him back, it needs to be on a short-term deal, not that high of a cap hit. I've seen the projections for his contract. Daily Faceoff had it at 5 times 5.4. We talked earlier this week. No thanks. I think Evolving Wild had their projections a lot higher. I think theirs was like something like 6 times 6.8. If I saw that on social media, actually. No thanks. The only way you can bring him back if it's on maybe a 2-year deal, $4 million per, something like that. I mean, can you even stomach paying him that much with all the injury concerns? That's the true question too. And I'm honestly not even sure he would command that on the contract. Maybe he would take a lower money cap hit to try to rebuild some value back up. I don't know. Obviously, the Penguins have not started negotiations with him because they don't even have a general manager still. It's been 6 weeks. But that is priority number one for whoever gets this gig. What do you do with him and the goaltending overall? And if you do bring him back, you have to find a way to get out of Casey DeSmith's contract. He has 1 more year left. Cannot run that tandem back for a 4th straight season. You cannot do it. It's failed every season that it's been the tandem. You cannot waste another season of Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang with that tandem. When Jarry was on his game, he was playing aggressive. First part of that season, it all went downhill during the Winter Classic. Right when I saw him itching for his groin, I'm like, well, not good. And from then on, it was not pretty. And I know what he said after the Columbus game. He said he'd been battling injuries all season, came back, was still battling injuries. And that just begs the question, why was he even playing at that point? Especially in that game against Columbus, right? That was a very weird decision for myself. That game meant nothing to the Penguins, and he still trotted out Jarry out there like their season was on the line. I'm like, what are we doing here? And he gave up that goal to Johnny Gaudreau, and then he spoke to the media and said, yeah, I've been banged up for the last few months. It's like, geez. I mean, so in a way, I get that his play dipped, but he shouldn't have been getting just some of those reps, especially towards the end of the season when it looked like the Penguins were just collapsing. So they have a true pickle on their hands here. If it's up to me, I would let him walk so he can sign with someone else, and I would bring in a full-fledged starter, whether you're overshooting Jeremy Swayman, if you can, trading for Connor Hellebuyck, UC Saros, trading for a different goalie if another one becomes available, or maybe you're signing someone like Aiden Hill in free agency. He's had a really strong season, and he's honestly one of the more underrated goalies in the NHL the last couple of years. And if you want to pair Hill with DeSmith, or maybe trade DeSmith and get another backup, I think that's fine too. But overall, you can't run the same tandem back in Jarry. He's just too banged up and I think too inconsistent for me to really commit to him. And if they do, you got to get someone else behind him that has starting experience and isn't inconsistent like DeSmith is. So that's my take on Tristan Jarry season. Painfully, at times he was good. A lot of times he wasn't. That gives me like a C-, D+ grade. Just wasn't good enough this season for the team. I know he was battling injuries. I'm trying not to, really pour on the guy just because he was hurt, had the back, had the groin, but wasn't good enough from their number one. And, he really hasn't recovered in a way since he just blew that series for the Penguins a couple of years ago against the Islanders. That one is still kicking at me, and I think quite a lot of people who watched that because the Penguins were the better team in that series. But that'll do it for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I really appreciate all of you listening / watching. I will not have an episode on Monday because it's Memorial Day here in the United States, unless there's somehow a move, but I don't expect there to be an announcement on Memorial Day. But Tuesday, I will be back, and assuming we get an announcement, there will be a whole lot of content to come, whether Dubis takes the job or whether he does not. So again, thank you all so much for listening. I very much appreciate it. I'll talk with you all on Tuesday.